Hello and welcome to the Castaway Pop Punk Vinyl podcast. Each week I ask my guests which 3 albums and 1 book they would take with them if they were stranded on a desert island. So sit back, relax and enjoy 2 people randomly talking about the music they love.
Okay, Tom, shut the fuck up. Okay, here we go.
Hello everyone, welcome to the 4th edition of the Castaway Pop Punk Vinyl podcast. This week I'm joined by friends of mine. These guys actually, I don't think they know this, but they played a huge influence on me growing up as a kid musically and the stuff I was writing when I was in a band. I've played in bands alongside these guys, and I also briefly played a small part in the band The Over Everythings, which was founded by these guys. So I'm really delighted to be joined by Joe, Chris and Jamie. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Hey man.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, how are you guys?
We're okay.
Good.
Just okay. Getting by.
Occasionally can be after months of isolation.
And it's like, it's a Tuesday night, isn't it? So we're all a bit tired.
So I mentioned The Over Everythings briefly. Is that band still alive? Is it still happening? Have you got anything in the pipeline?
Yes. So we put out our first album in 2016. It was called No Solidarity. And it, like, in the process of writing it, became a half a concept album about a character called Hannah, which we enjoyed. And then in the intervening years, we started to try and play it live and realised it was too hard for us to play live. Really find a drummer who can actually play the thing. And then so in the process, we started writing our second album. Like, we finished writing our second album pretty much, which is looking like it's going to be called No Feeling. And it's like another concept album about some other characters, because we really like concept albums. We'd only ever written songs about pointless crap before, but these 2 records have like addressed, like, trying to look at, like, the latest one is set in a dystopian future where the world has all gone to shit due to climate change, you know, capitalism running riot and destroying everybody, and it's set in that era. That's what it's all about, and it's very exciting.
I think the whole thing changed from what basically me and Jamie went to a gig and got pissed and decided we wanted to start a skate punk band, and that was pretty much the beginning and end of the conversation in terms of what we aimed for it to be. We just wanted to do something that sounded a bit like NoFX or something, and it wasn't until Joe started writing the songs and the whole concept thing came up, it was like, oh, actually this has got more legs than I thought. And especially with the second record, it's now, it's definitely sort of becoming its own thing rather than just a sort of homage to all the bands that we wanted to rip off on the first record, basically.
It definitely started as like a file share project between me and Chris, who've like known each other for a really long time and played in bands together for a long time as well. But we'd never really scratched that itch before. And then we went to a gig, I think it was Hives, We Are Scientists and Pup.
That was it, yeah.
What a lineup.
Yeah, and we missed Pup because we were and they were like the main reason we went. But anyway, we just got talking about it, and we're both pretty bored at the time, I think. So I started to send Chris stuff, and he would drum on it, and it was just like exactly what I was expecting him to send back to me.
Yeah.
So it's definitely evolved from that into something like way beyond that, especially since Joe got involved, and Joe, you know, did a lot of writing for the second record.
I remember, so for those listening who don't know, I was in The Over Everythings briefly, kind of during the writing of the No Solidarity album, and I was in Latvia with a mate, and I got a text from Joe, and I've grown up with Joe, but not like in a close friendship way, just we've always been in school together, and I've as odd as this might sound, Joe, and I don't want to be weird, but I always looked up to you, and a lot of people did in the couple of years below, like Borderline were like the band to aspire to be. So then Joe messaged me on Facebook saying, we need a bass player. Our bass player is no longer available. Can you play bass for the band that I'm in? I was like, I don't play bass. I don't own one. but definitely. And then he sent me the songs, and it's like 1.5 minute, million miles an hour skate punk music. And I was like, fuck, I've committed to this. And now I've got, and then I'm borrowing Chris's bass. Chris has to like lend me a bass and give it to me to keep. And it was just so awkward. It was such good fun because the music was so good, and I'm playing with a guy that like I've always loved vocally, and like lyrically it was amazing. But as kind of time went on, the band kind of went its own way a little bit, and then it kind of fizzled out. I live probably like an hour away from you guys anyway, so I feel like that was always going to happen, but it was definitely fun to be a part of briefly. But certainly I think, Joe, you said a moment ago that you've always written quite pointless stuff. I'd disagree with that. I reckon the stuff you've always been writing has been very poignant and meant a lot to the people at the time. But certainly the album No Solidarity was like a whole new level of, like, lyrically it was really clever, conceptually it was really clever, it was really on point of what was happening at the time. So I, for one, am really excited about the next album coming, because if it's anything like No Solidarity, and I'm sure you guys think it's probably better, it should be really good. I'm excited for it. Do you have any idea of when it's coming?
Well, that's $1 million question at the moment.
Yeah, we'll need to finish recording it. So it's all written, and it's all been written for a while. And being is that it's a much like tighter concept this time, as in there's like a through narrative that sort of begins and ends. So I wrote a lot of it at home, because at the time I was trying to just like learn how to record at home, and I ended up just whizzing through it quite quickly, and then it was done. And it was done maybe 2 years ago. Like, I probably did the last demos, and then, you know, it just in exactly the same way as the earlier stuff was recorded, it would be pinged around, and Jamie would have bits to it, and Chris would have bits to it, and the demos took shape. But we've like tried a couple of times to get it recorded, and we've started, and I think we've got the formula now for how we want to record it.
I think that the problem with recording anything remotely, and like with the first record, I don't think we overthought it too much, because it was just like, well, this is how we're going to do it. Like, we didn't really have any expectation of like a level that we wanted to record it to, and it ended up coming out way better than we ever thought it would. And I mean, we even managed to get it mastered by Scott Halquist, who I'd met that year anyway, just by complete chance, really. And like I played some of the stuff to him, and he plays guitar in a band called 10 Foot Pole, who I've been into since I was about 14 years old. So like, when he said about mastering it, I was just kind of like, okay, well, this is already like, that kind of put pressure on to make it sound half decent at that point, because I was like, well, I can't send an album off to be mastered by someone in 10 Foot Pole and not make it sound legit.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, so like, we kind of set the bar with it kind of unintentionally, and then this time around we did want to do it a bit more organically. Like, we wanted to record more of it in the room together. We didn't want it to just be a remote recording project, and then lockdown happened, so it's kind of like it became like a remote project by default at that point. But now it sort of took long enough that it's now not again. So but we're kind of at the stage now where we're actually sort of getting the tracking done and getting it done to a level where we're all really, really pleased with. So yeah. So once it's recorded, you know, we live in a world now where it's just done, and then it can
exactly, yeah.
So like, it's not like the labels are queuing up with their large promotion campaigns or anything like that. So
where are we going to see billboards?
No. So yeah, once it's recorded, it will be out in the world in some way or another. But I think it's going to be really good.
It'll be next year, won't it? It'll be around by next year. Well, not by next year, during
2020 at some point it'll be about. Well, I'll definitely share it, shout about it when it's out. So I'll be looking out for it. So at the risk of this turning into me wanting to know what you guys are up to personally, the point of this podcast is that you guys have been, for some reason, stranded on a desert island. No one really knows why. Joe's gone, probably to the desert. Oh, pizza's there.
Pizza's right.
people listening in their car, what have you got? Domino's?
So we've gone with Papa John's. Jamie and I just shared a margarita, but Chris's wife Stacey's bought us some kitchen to wipe our hands with afterwards, which is just beautiful.
Isn't that lovely?
Where should we put it? Should we
Set it down.
Should we set it down?
Put it on the floor.
And just
That's very sweet. You can eat that as we go. I don't want it going cold.
Okay. Well, I'm going
I'll just let Chris answer all the questions.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, you guys have randomly, for some reason, ended up on a desert island, and you've been given 3 albums to listen to for the rest of your lives. So the point is, you tell everyone what 3 albums you've chosen and why you've chosen them, and it kind of gives a bit of an insight into the music that influenced you growing up. So album number 1, on your desert island, what have you chosen?
Yeah, so the way we've done it, it's slightly different from, I think, the way some other guys have done it.
Yeah.
So far, episodes that you've done before. We kind of got together and said, let's kind of do it as a band and try and pick 3 that kind of influenced us the most when we were putting this band together, and like the kind of common threads that we have from the music that we were listening to growing up anyway. So
I like it.
First, should we say the first one is?
You're cool, man.
Let's start with the one that I know Kins will love, which is Green Day, and we've gone for Insomniac as our first choice.
Great. That is probably my second favorite Green Day album.
Oh, that's cool, man.
What's your first?
It's a toss-up between Kaplunk and Dookie, because Kaplunk was the first Green Day album I ever listened to, so that it has this nostalgic attachment to me that I can't shake ever.
Yeah.
And then Dookie is just I don't know, like every song I just love completely, but then equally I kind of feel the same about American Idiot, but I don't feel ashamed about that, because a lot of people are, oh, American Idiot, whatever, but American Idiot,
Good record.
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's genuinely, like, I was a huge fan anyway, and then it kind of made me even more of a fan.
I know exactly what you mean about Kaplunk, because I've always been a huge Green Day fan, but I don't think any Green Day song like triggers more like nostalgic and awesome like memories than 2000 Light Years Away. Like I think that like the intro to 2000 Light Years Away, just like every sinew of my brain goes, remember that. Like,
exactly. I remember being in a Green Day tribute band and playing it as part of our set, and people used to go, I like Green Day, and I used to be really arrogant about it for some reason, like, yeah, but do you know 2000 Light Years Away? Because we play that one, which is weird, but yeah, that album for sure has that nostalgic thing for me, so that's probably why it's my favorite. But so Insomniac, I guess, so you've chosen the 3 albums collectively, so I just kind of want to talk about, have you individually got stories about it? Do you remember the first time you listened to it? I mean, it came out in 1995, so you probably weren't around for you were around, but not old enough to remember its kind of release. So
now that's funny you should say that, because I think that I have a particular attachment to Insomniac because I'd have been 9, but I've got older brothers. I'm the youngest of 3, and so that record was like floating around in my house, and that really impacted me. I remember that record really impacting me, and then I started there. I actually started there with Green Day, and then kind of zoomed out and went backwards and forwards with it.
Wow.
But it was, you know, I kind of learned to play guitar to that song, that record. I'd sit in my room and just blast it on a CD player and just play along to it and play along to it and play along to it. I mean, if I'd have chosen like a prog album, I might be a better guitar player now. You know, I learned to play guitar to that.
Yeah, but would you be a songwriter?
No, exactly.
I think for me, like, it felt like, because Basket Case and When I Come Around, and those songs were so, like, they felt like they were ingrained in your conscience when you were a kid. Like, you already knew them before you'd even realise that you'd heard them, I guess. Like, they just always seem to be around. So, I mean, the beauty of getting into a band like Green Day when you were like 11 or 12 or 13 or whatever is they already had like 3 or 4 like amazing albums that you can go back to.
Yeah.
And Insomniac was the one I remember there being not a lot of kind of fanfare around, like people knew Nimrod really well and they knew Dookie really well. And then Insomniac is like sandwiched in between those 2 records. But it's the one for me that is just the most like really concise and just really like there's no fat on that record. Like it's just like straight up just brilliantly written songs. That like 3 chords in the truth, like there's never been more true for Green Day than it is on that record, I think.
Yeah, I agree, man, because like Nimrod, I really, really, really love Nimrod, but it is fat, isn't it? Like it's a little bit too long.
Yeah.
And it's the start of them starting to realize that they could have real fucking mainstream appeal. But conversely, Insomniac feels much more honest. It's just like a really short, sharp punch in the face honest album.
I remember. Well, I read about it recently because I knew we were doing this. We picked it that like Insomniac was kind of an answer to people who had kind of turned their backs on Green Day for being perceived to sell out. And then they came out with this record that was like, no, this is just like, this is what we've
I was
always
reading that about 86 the other day. I never knew what 86 was about until literally a few months ago. And
I've just realised now what it's about.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Being 86 from the scene.
86 from the scene, Gilmore Street and all of that, which is crazy. That album for me like came around at like the perfect time because I was, full disclosure, I'm 40 next year, so I do remember it coming out, and like
we do have an age policy. No one.
I remember it coming out, and it was the first Green Day album that I remember coming out, and I was already by that point a huge fanboy, so like it came out, and I was like, you know, like at HMV or wherever, like 9 a.m. on the dot to buy it on the day it came out, because they were like, my favorite band, and it was the album that they.
Oh wow!
and it was like I don't think, probably more than any album I've ever bought, I like vividly remember like just being so eager to get it home and just get like the inlay open and listen to it over and over again and read the lyrics along with the song. And then the next day I went out and I bought the tab book, and I remember like I literally only just started playing guitar because I was like 13, and I had this old like acoustic guitar. I like didn't have an electric guitar at that point, and I remember rifling through the tab book and literally just finding the song that had the fewest chord shapes. You know, when it tells you all the chords at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I found Stuart in the Avenue. It's like, right, there's only 3 chords in this whole fucking song. That's the one I'm learning. And that was like the first song I ever learned to play the whole song on guitar because it had the fewest chords on that record.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was, but like looking back, like even nostalgic side aside, I just think, it had that kind of real visceral thing that people hadn't heard from Green Day. Like it was so much darker than anything they'd done before.
Yeah.
And I think it was, you know, just basically a whole album about taking drugs, but like not having fun on those drugs. Like it was, you know, it was a dark record.
Wanting your parents to die so you can get their money.
Yeah. The other thing with it as well, and I think probably why I liked it so much when I was really young, was that like a lot of bands are writing songs about love and the heartbreak and all that kind of thing, and you're like, you've got no experience of that when you're like 12 or 13, right? Not really.
Absolutely.
But you have taken meth.
But yeah, well, you know, the same is true about drugs for most people. A lot of the themes about like being disillusioned and feeling a bit lost and all that kind of thing. That's the thing I think with Green Day that resonates the most with kids of that sort of age when they get into that band.
Yeah,
and probably why their appeal still is like absolutely huge.
Yeah,
definitely. I also love the fact that like I'm Green Day are a really good example of the like I see Insomniac as a bit of a fuck you album. Like we've got big, this is what we do, but fuck you. Now here's something slightly different. All right, Insomniac's still an extremely accessible, like pop sounding album, but they obviously go and do that again later when they do Warning after Nimrod. Like I'm really interested in that idea of artists. Like you see it then. That's the first sign of them like trying to break away from the mold. And so the things like American Idiot start to make a bit more sense. Like it's that idea of like In Utero following Nevermind. Yeah. Like I love that idea of bands getting big and then just going, well, fuck you. Listen to this. And there's a part of that spirit in that record.
That was definitely actually. I remember like when I was watching MTV because Green Day were playing live on. It was Lisa Lee Anson was still hosting it, and Green Day played or were due to play Brain Stew on this show. I can't remember what the show was called, but it was like. I got home from school and watched it. It must have been on at like 4 p.m. or something. And it was like they played. And I don't think the producers of the TV show knew anything about the song. So they didn't know that Brain Stew goes straight into Jaded. And I don't think they were ready for Green Day to go into Jaded. And they started playing like the titles of the TV show over the end of Brain Stew, at which point on live TV, Billy Joe Armstrong just waved at the producer and just said, "Shut the fuck up." And then they launched into the fastest version of Jaded you'll ever hear in your life. And it was absolute chaos. And like 13-year-old me was just like, oh my God, what is happening? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Because it was the most punk rock thing I'd ever seen. It was like a band telling someone to shut the fuck up on live television and launching into a song that they weren't meant to be playing. Like, it blew my tiny mind at 13.
It's like that grown ups.
Yeah, it's like, it was you can't control us.
I know the exact thing you're talking about. I still watch it now and was like, fuck, I still think that's so cool. Even stuff like, there's a clip of Billy Joe, I think this was on the Nimrod tour. Someone's just being a dick in the crowd and he's like, fight me, fuck you fighting that person there, come and fight me. He puts his guitar down and just double foots straight into the crowd and just starts battering someone. He's never ever given a fuck. I think that album as well is like, obviously it came off the back of Dookie and it was a fuck you album, but it's still like really well produced. Like that drum intro to Armitage Shanks just sounds so good. Incredible album. I think No Pride would probably have to be my favorite track. I just love the melody. Every melody on every song is superb. But the No Pride melody just had me for months on end.
Yeah. It's economically written album, isn't it? It's just like, here's a hook. But you're right about the production. Like the production on that record is so good. The production's really tight too. Like the drums feel in a room like they feel really insular. And like the bass sound on that record is just so the perfect sound. Like you still try and chase that sound. We still try and chase that sound all the time.
Absolutely.
Like, come on, it's the Mike Dirnt Insomniac sound. It's that kind of like twang while still sounding fat. Like still being able to carry a 3-piece with only one guitar with that tone. Like shit, man. I guess that's down to the playing too, right?
I think economical is definitely like the right word, but then like there's kind of like one excessive bit in that album, which is like the intro to Panic Song. And that is just the first time I remember hearing that for the first time and just being blown away. Like it ends up being like after that huge like epic intro, it ends up being like a 2-minute song after that. But like I must
admit, like when American Idiot came out and everyone was reacting with such kind of like shock and awe over how like a band like Green Day could do a rock opera, I was like, well, yeah, but they were aping the Who on Insomniac, and that's the example. Like that is pure Who, that bit. And so when they did American Idiot, it was like no surprise to me at all, because it's like, they always had this in them. Like, and I think they just got the confidence to do it by American Idiot, I think, and maybe had the concept to hang a whole opera on rather than just a 35-minute record.
Yeah, I think they'd done Warning by that point as well. So by that point, it's just like we'll throw another curveball at you. I respect that.
I love it. Like,
I remember buying Warning in the same way you described buying Insomniac, because by this point I'm just obsessed. And I remember getting that home being like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I was the same.
Fucking acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And but Minority was the lead single off that. It was really good, but sounded enough like Green Day that it kind of carried. I think that was a wise choice making that the single. But now, probably one of my favorite Green Day records. Just it feels like slightly like a different band, but we're not talking about the record. But I did adore that too.
We were sort of wigging out about the guitar tone on that album the other day, because we were like referencing Green Day for like just they're one of our go-tos when we want to talk about guitar tone. There's always a Green Day song or a Green Day album where it's like that's the guitar tone we want. And the guitar tone on Warning is so good. Like it's so proper original, and I don't think they did that record with the same. I don't think they did it with Rob Cavallo. I think that was like the first one they did without him, and it was like, I might be wrong, but like
you're probably right.
But the guitars sound different. But like for that record especially, they sound so fat. And,
I think they deliberately wanted to use like 1950s guitars. They wanted it. So Rob Cavallo did produce Warning.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah, I've just googled it. By the way, I'm not a Green Day.
You knew that.
So Chris, at the risk of this becoming a podcast talking about Green Day, I want to stay on Green Day for a minute. How do you feel about Green Day now? Because I remember when Revolution Radio came out, and you were kind of a bit like, I can't remember the name. So once their first single came out, so what happened was after American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown, I no longer became obsessed with their catalogue. So I don't really know Green Day inside out like I know now, like I used to. So I can't remember the name of the single that came out, but you loved it, and then all of a sudden they brought out something else, and you kind of was a bit disappointed again. So Green Day now, do you feel they're not the same? How do you feel about them?
To be honest, man, I mean, I'll be honest. I listened to the last one they put out. I can't even remember what it was called. I was going on holiday, and I lined it up as something to listen to on the plane, and I forced myself to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
All good relationships with albums start that way, don't they?
Yeah. and I knew what I was in for. Like, I don't know, it was like texting an ex or something. And I hated it. I hated every second of it.
But
it's sad. I'm not taking anything away from the band, because they by far have been the biggest influence on me as a musician, a songwriter, than any other band in the world. But they've lost me. I don't know what they are now. I don't know what it is they do, and I don't know what they get out of it. But I hope they get something out of it.
There's one other band in this world that I will give the same amount of like.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Go on.
Yeah. I'll give them, like, I know that like Green Day for me, it sort of ended after American Idiot. I kind of lost track of them after that.
Yeah.
But I will always now go back and go, oh, Green Day got a song out, I want to check that out. The only other band I'll do that with and afford that time for is Weezer. Like,
yeah.
And you reach a point where you've been hurt so many times.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's so weird talking to you about this, because I feel exactly the same, where you feel let down by three people you have no idea who you've never met them. They don't give a fuck about you, but you're so personally connected to them. Like their latest album, the album cover is like a close up of the hand grenade from American Idiot. And it's like, why have you done that? Because this is nothing like American Idiot. You cannot release a shit album and put American Idiot on the fucking cover. Like, don't piss me off. And then I'm like, what's wrong with me? It's just like 50-year-old men that like writing music these days. So who cares?
They are like well within their right to put out at this stage whatever they want.
Yeah, they've
to put
earned
out,
it, man.
you
Like
know?
they can
Yeah.
do whatever they want.
I
I
agree.
just won't listen.
Yeah.
I will. I'll listen to it once.
Yeah.
And then one day they might surprise me and I will be back in there and everything will be forgiven.
No, that's how they get you.
Yeah, I know.
I hope it kills you, innit?
That's how
Yeah,
music
yeah,
ends.
yeah.
They bring out the white
They'll
album.
do a white album, won't they? And you'll go, they're back, just like I knew they'd always be back. And they're not.
And then they go again.
And then I do not care for them now.
No.
Joe, I think you hit the nail on the head by saying you've been hurt too many times, and that is so
Yeah,
true.
that's
I build up so much hope for an album that's coming out, released worldwide, and it's just a hock of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so painful because, like you said, I'll always go and see him live. I'll always have such high hopes for a new album, and it's till the day I die. I can't expect to.
But hey, you know, maybe time just moves on. You change, they change.
You know, like that. It's like that.
Listen to, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, they've still given you as a fan and as a musician, you know, they've given you at least 5 of the best pop punk albums you could ask
Yeah,
for.
and
So,
What
like,
a run.
yeah.
And for the time being, they've been neither Me Too'd
Yeah.
nor
No.
cancelled in any other way.
Yeah.
So far now.
So no. So like, you know, we could get into this later with the other records we talk about, but
Yeah.
you can still listen. I can still listen to our Green albums, and it feels okay.
Yeah. I don't feel dirty listening to Green Day because I still feel like they're good guys as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to your second album.
Feels wrong. Go on.
So so what you're saying is you can listen to Insomniac forever and not get bored of it. The second album that you can do that with is
Is a Real Boy by Say Anything. Jamie played it to me. That was how I
did.
remember this.
Yeah, that's a good story, right?
I had a tiny little car, and Jamie got in my tiny little car. I think we were driving to a gig or something, and he just had a CD with him, and he just put it in. And he went, "You're going to love this," and I did. And ever since, I've been a bit obsessed with it, and we still talk about it, and we still reference it with this band. Like, it's always a go-to for us in terms of just how to take people on a bit of a, this sounds a bit wanky, but like how to take people on a bit of a journey, like across a record, like how to do like proper talk, like storytelling, like proper, like reeling people in with a yarn.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
I think as well. So that record came out, I think, in 2004 or 5.
Yeah.
By the time I'd heard it, it was probably like 2005, and like I kind of wasn't really listening to pop punk at that point. I'd kind of like got into other stuff, you know, and was probably at a pretty pretentious phase. But I found this record. I can't even remember how. It must have been another band that I liked were talking about it or something, and it really expanded on pop punk as I knew it, like what I expected a pop punk band to be.
Yeah.
Like, it's all over the place, this record, from start to finish. Like, it crosses all these different genres and styles, but it had so much of the like fuzz and like melody and like raw quality that I always loved. So yeah, and I knew, like Chris said, like I knew that I could play it to him and he'd get it and then he'd love it.
Yeah, that is like I came to that record later because that was on, I think it was on it came out on Drive Through, and it was like I was kind of over it. I was over that by that point. I was into a different phase, and they released Alive with the Glory Lovers as a single, and it had like a video, and they looked like every other one of those like later stage pop punk bands. But that record was marketed so wrong that it shouldn't have come out. It shouldn't have been like, that's like an art rock record. Like it's not. It has all the spirit of a pop punk album, but it's so much more expansive, and the songwriting, the arrangements are so like ambitious. The production, like I don't know, you know, now having learned a little bit about how to record things, I just think that's a fucking headache trying to make that record. Like, how do you have that much going on and for it all to stick out and have its place? It's so smart. It's such a smart record. I love it so much.
I think in terms of like the moving away from the kind of cliche pop punk thing as well, like vocally and lyrically, it had got to the point where a lot of pop punk bands and a lot of sort of the kind of emo pop punk crossover bands, it was just so much whining. And it was like, for me, I never got into like Dashboard. I never got into any of the more emo pop punk bands because like for me there was too much whining going on, and it was like, you left me, why did you leave me? And I was kind of like just over people whining about girls. And then this album came out and, you know, opens up an album with a rant about like music posers and like, and it's just like a spoken word rant with so much vitriol and so fucking wordy and like just absolutely spitting at people. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to listen to. Like, and it just kind of completely reeled me in. And of course there are songs about relationships and there are songs about girls on that record, but the unhingedness, there was, for me, it was so much less like saccharine and pretentious as a lot of the bands that were around that time. It was so much more real. Like, this guy was clearly unhinged, and he wasn't well. Like, he wasn't in a good place, and he had to write these songs to get into a better place. And the songs were just brutal about that. And I felt like it just made all of these other bands that were just singing about breakups in the most cliche way possible just seem to be what they were to me. Like, it just seemed such a sideshow to it. It's like, no, this guy's got some real shit going on.
You're right. You're right. It's like it does have that feeling of like what would you like, it feels vital. Like, it feels like vital to him to have written that record. And I'm obsessed with that, like that cliche of like the tortured artist and all that. It's just, I still find that fascinating. And he sounds like he's in so much pain on that record. Or like not even in pain, but just he's outside of society. And he doesn't know. And what I love about it more than anything is the humor in it. Like lyrically and in his delivery, he is making fun of really dark shit.
It's funny, man. It's a funny record. It's self-deprecating in that way. And that's something that we've talked about actually with our band. Going forward is like, right, let's try and just let people in on it. Life is funny, man. Like, there's not enough music that doesn't like that tries to capture that, you know.
Verging on like satire. It's quite an ironic album. It kind of takes the piss of the genre which it's integral to. But what he does really cleverly is everyone's aware that that's what he's doing. It's not like, does this guy know what he's doing? He clearly does, and that's what makes it so
he's
clever.
like Bo Burnhaming before Bo Burnham did it. Like, he was kind of when he's just like shamelessly proclaiming that he spends hours in front of the mirror making his hair look elegantly disheveled. It's like, fuck, like, that's what I take the piss out of people for doing, but you're admitting you do it, so now I can't take the piss out of you for doing it. And like, Bo Burnham does something about that on that Inside thing, and it's the same thing. It's like, if you can answer your critics by just owning up to stuff straight up, then it's like, well, what have they got? Like, and he just completely criticizes himself in a funnier way that most of his detractors ever could. And it makes the record better for it, I think.
And besides, you know, any record that pulls off like what is essentially a beautifully sincere love song set during the Holocaust, like it's really ambitious thing to do, right? And I think that is all of that, like the fact that it's called Alive with the Glory of Love. I remember it feeling like, oh, there's the title. This is another one of those saccharine bands that you're talking about. But that feels like a piss take of a title almost, because like that is such an ambitious thing to take on, but it's so beautifully told that still it gives me like it gets me in the feels, that song.
Oh my
like
God, yeah.
like so many other much more outwardly this is a love songs don't at all, but that really gets me in the feels. It's a fucking great song.
I heard
don't know where to start with that song, to be honest. It's just it's too much.
I heard him speak about that song, and he said his grandparents were part of the Holocaust and found love during that time, and he was like, how can anything else in this world matter when you can find love in the most horrendous, horrible place?
What a tribute as well, like.
100%. But he also said that so he believes in like the butterfly effect, and that album, the mistakes that he made on that album, if you can call them mistakes, led him to write better music, or led him to do the things that he did post that album. But if he listened to that album in a vacuum and that's the only thing he ever did, he would record the whole thing again. It's weird how an album can mean so much to, say, for example, you guys, but to him it's like, I'd do it again in a heartbeat if I could.
The crazy thing is as well, like, to a listener, there's no way you'd think that is an album that, like, you know, production wise, or it had been like poured over, because it sounds so live, it sounds so energetic. Like, and I remember being surprised that there's only like 3 musicians on the whole record, because it's like him and a drummer, like he basically did everything. And like that is enough to send you mental. Like I can't believe he managed to do that. Like, it's hard enough recording a band yourself when you're like a band, but doing it like a project like that, wow, like, well done for finishing it. Because, like,
man, I'd walk away from that album
totally
like mic fucking drop. Like, look,
it's weird, isn't it?
I think the problem for him as well, I think, is like, that's kind of, he had some records, or like at least one record before that, but obviously didn't have like proper release to the extent that Is a Real Boy did. So if that's kind of your proper opening salvo as a musician, right, and then you've got to try and top that, or at least, like, I mean, what he actually did was kind of after In Defense of the Genre, the record after that, which was like a huge double album. And
tried to
like,
be ambitious, didn't he? Tried too hard to be ambitious.
But then since then he's kind of gone on taking a different approach to kind of every record. So again, like, expressing himself in different ways. But for me, I mean, that might, it's like you were saying, that might not be his idea of what Say Anything is, but to me that is, that's my Say Anything. The same way that Insomniac is my Green Day.
That's the beauty of music, I suppose, and the way it just gets stuck in time and it's there forever for people to enjoy it however they want to. And I think I think it's weird for bands to be like, stop liking our old stuff, we've got this new stuff now. It's like, no, enjoy all of it for what it was.
But and you shouldn't fall into the trap either of, like, you know, why didn't they make another Is a Real Boy?
Exactly,
Because he didn't want to. Fine.
And also, you can't. That was what it was in your head, in your heart. You can't recreate that.
I read an interview with Nick Cave the other day, and he was saying, like, I think somebody asked him about like Morrissey and like how, you know, he's basically a douchebag now. So like what do you do with the songs that you like now that you know someone's a twat? And he basically said, well, it doesn't matter, because from his point of view, once he releases a song, it's not his anymore, it's the listeners, and they can do what they want with it in their head. And I think that's the same with like Max Bemis. I think he's got so much ambition as a songwriter that it's not necessarily the ambition of the listener that he's giving the music to. So that album, for me at that time, it was perfect. I don't care if you want to re-record it. It's done now, and it's in my head, and it's perfect in my head, so it's not yours anymore. That memory of that record is perfect.
And that album is yours in your own way, as it is Jamie's, etc. So
absolutely,
that is the beauty of music. I'm probably too old to be following like pop punk fan pages on Facebook, but I do. And that album always is shared as like, does anyone still listen to this? I was like, I've never stopped listening to it. It's an album cover that I always see knocking about somehow, and I feel like it's a bit of a shame that Say Anything were never really didn't get as popular as those emo bands that were around at the time.
He made some choices, right? You know, like for better or worse, and didn't want to. It's the same thing. Like me and Joe have been talking about this Vagrant Records podcast that we've been listening to, and the Get Up Kids are on there, and they released. And this is another record that, like, if we hadn't done it this way, we'd picked 3 each. It probably would have been in one of our 3.
Yeah, something to write home about.
Something to write home about. Is just an incredible album, and their follow up to that was On a Wire, which is like not remotely really like something to write home about. If they'd written another Something to Write Home About, they would have been massive, like bigger than they were.
Yeah.
I think. So it's kind of the same, you know. Like he could have tried to make another Is a Real Boy, and probably would have, you know, had music videos on TV and all that kind of stuff, but chose not to. Chose to record a double album with like countless guests on it, and another record that just jumps all over the map. Like, so you know, that's just an artistic choice, isn't it? Yeah,
that's what I meant when I first started talking about it. I mean, he's not. I mean, no disrespect to Chris Carrabba is the first person that comes into my mind. Like, they are both artists, but their ambitions are extremely different, aren't they? Right? Like, and he is ambitious with his art, and he doesn't really seem to care that much about who he's making it for. Like, I respect that.
Yeah, for sure. So the final album then that will be with you on this desert island, as a collective, what have you chosen?
Pump Up the Volume by NoFX.
Why?
I mean, it's probably
so. I'll just.
God.
I will confess that. So, someone who's grown up with pop punk music, I am very narrow-minded with my music, and to my detriment, I'm probably missing out on a lot of music that you guys know inside out and that I haven't experienced or opened up to. NoFX being one of those bands, never really given them a time of day, don't really want to. So, someone like me, if I'm, you know, because you know me, but I'm a huge Blink fan. I'll still listen to All the Small Things. Huge Green Day fan. All the cheesy pop punk stuff I've always loved. Why should I give NoFX the time of day?
I think so. It's funny, we were talking about this right before we came on the call. Like, I was saying that I'd got into and listened to NoFX before knowing anything really about NoFX. But I think if I was you now and had never dipped into it, knowing what I know about them now, I would probably not go. I think I'm gonna just a new habit. I'm gonna take up liking NoFX. I don't think that would happen for me. So yeah. I get it. But so I came into that band not really knowing. I was young still, and there was no there wasn't. I mean, there was internet, but it wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
And through my older brother, Punkin' Drublick, So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes were like really big albums, and I think that was the first time I'd heard like the skate punk beat, and then Pump Up the Volume, it comes out when I'm like, I mean, I must have been, I must have been 14, that kind of age, and that was the one where like I knew that band, I knew their music, and I was excited about that record coming out, and it came out and it did not disappoint me in any way at all. Like, I loved that record right from the minute I heard it.
Yeah, I think if you're like starting from nothing and you don't know NoFX at all, I would like, maybe like the purist NoFX fans might not agree, but this would be the record I think that I would encourage you to start with, because musically it's so clever. Like, and I didn't, and as Joe was saying, didn't really realize that until years after I'd first heard it and kind of revisited it. Like, incredible harmonies, like just like really technical playing, really melodic solos. Like, they have always been a better band than they would let on that they are.
Yeah, and I think they're peaking. They're peaking at that point in their career as well, because the songwriting is. I mean, they do the Decline. That's really fucking smart bit of work. But Pump Up the Volume feels smarter. It feels like they're trying really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't like. It's almost like comparing it to like Is a Real Boy, whereas Is a Real Boy just sounds like somebody's therapy.
Yeah.
Like Pump Up the Volume can be more the opposite in that it's such a well thought out record. Like it is like it's knowingly smart, and like musically it's knowingly smart. Like everything about it. Like, I mean, we were saying earlier, like even the fact that I didn't appreciate it when I first listened to it. I just like liked the songs, but looking back on it, like some of the meta musical jokes that are on that record, like they sing the word modulation while modulating and then say give me another key and then change key, and like there's all kinds of just like meta gags on it, and like the writing is so tight and so melodic, the harmonies are awesome, like you know, some of the chord sequences are like pure Beatles stuff, like it's proper clever songwriting, and yet they play the clown, like the whole way through their career have just been like, yeah, we're just, you know, dumb drunk punk guys. It's like, no, you're fucking not. Like, you know what you're doing. Like, you are drunk though. Like, so you're not doing it as well as you could sometimes. But yeah, they know what they're doing, and they're a smart band, and that album is, like some of the songwriting on it is phenomenal.
Yeah, there was some shit that I didn't understand that I understand now, like but there's some funny songs, man, like Clams Have Feelings Too is on that record, right?
Yeah.
No Chowder For You, Clams Have Feelings Too. And they don't have central nervousness. I mean, what a fucking stupid lyric.
Yeah, they have no face, no space for ears. They have no eyes to cry clam tears.
There's no clam eyes to cry clam tears. No spinal cord, they must get bored. It's so
I mean, I don't feel like we're selling it, Kims, I'll be honest.
I can't wait to give this a listen, I must say.
But it's one of those albums that, there are like and I mean it's no effects through and through lyrically, because, you know, 1 minute they're joking about clams being able to cry, and the next minute they're making like really, really valid points about major record deals and like legalization of drugs and stuff like that. So like, you know, they take you on a bit of a weird journey, because
I feel like I should love them, because they clearly influenced the stuff that I'm into. They've been around forever. Old Fat Mike. Again, I'm on Wikipedia. Fat Mike. He owns his own label. He's got an autobiography. He's clearly an influential bloke, you said, who knows what he's doing. So in that scene and everything that I love, for me not to be an NoFX fan feels probably slightly embarrassing.
It's like, it surprises me, because you definitely would really like them. There's a run of 4 albums there that you would definitely like. It's everything that you like. It's like, it's melodic, it's harmonic, it's smartly written songs. I guess the only difference is it's super fucking fast pretty much all the way through. As a rule, you've got that.
I mean, I remember the first time I heard any NoFX song, it was on one of those Punkorama compilations, and I remember loving it because it was so fast, and at the time I was just into fast punk rock, so like anything that was fast I was in, and it was like the first song on one of these Punkorama albums, and I loved it. But I remember the vocals did jar, because Fat Mike's voice is like so like grating, and I just remember like hearing it, and it had that kind of Billy Joe Armstrong-esque kind of drawl about it, but it was almost like, I don't know, it was like scientists had just like inbred Billy Joe like 10 times, and that is the voice that you get eventually, you know, like when you overbreed a dog, like if you just did that with Billy Joe, you then felt that voice.
There is that thing you do when you overbreed a dog.
I don't. But yeah, like it was that kind of just like, you know, you started off with a Billy Joe kind of voice and then it just got more weird.
You've lost me.
No, I don't know.
To bring it back.
Yeah.
Blink is obviously a band that, like, you really love, Kins, and like with all their little silly little songs about like dicks and grandpa.
This is bringing it back.
Grandpa eating like, too many hot dogs and all that kind of stuff, and dogs, like, you know, let's not. There's no way. There's absolutely no way, coming from where they come from and doing songs like that they aren't in any way influenced by NoFX. Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I would say, and I've heard another great band from back in the day that Mark Hoppus I've heard talk about being massively influenced by his Descendants. You know,
yeah.
same thing, fart jokes and recording themselves farting and putting it on records and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
like there's absolutely no way that those bands aren't massively influential to them.
Yeah.
No, and there's no effects without Descendants, ironically.
Yeah.
And then there's no most of that wave of pop punk.
There's
bands
none
without
of any of what we've just talked about without Descendants.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard Blink talk about Descendants all the time, but then equally, there's no Descendants without. People always say the Beatles, and I fucking hate the Beatles.
Fuck.
So this is what I love about music. It's like, well, I don't really care that someone else influenced you because I love. It's weird, isn't it? It feels like strange to say that and arrogant, but knowing that there would be no Blink without the Descendants, NoFX doesn't drive me to go and listen to those bands.
No, not at all. Yeah, no, I get that. And yeah, there's like that brag of like, oh yeah, but you know that band, you like that band, but do you know the band that that inspired them?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I give a shit to a certain extent. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that band. So
Yeah.
Give it a go if you want. If you don't want to, don't.
Yeah.
I think that, like, hopefully, I think maybe punk rock has lost a little bit of that elitism.
Yeah.
It certainly felt like that back in the day. Like, you'd get into a band, and I mean, thank God there wasn't the internet at the level we have the internet now. When
right?
Getting into these bands, because you'd just be paranoid about every new thing you discover, because you'd worry whether it was the earliest form of that thing to get into, at risk of being shamed that you were so late to the game. Whereas, like with Pump Up the Volume, it was kind of like, I knew what NoFX did, like I knew what they sounded like, and that album came out, and it was like, yeah, they've done it again. Like, but it did have something new about it. I mean, it didn't have any Scar songs on it.
Yeah, that's good. That's always good. Yeah.
But you know, it did have like a pirate shanty.
Yeah, it did.
So
Did it? That's
it's
intriguing.
see, I mean, you know, and that wouldn't have happened without Mad Caddy. So they did a whole album of pirate punk. So where were you then? Why were none of you listening to that one?
None of that.
Yeah.
Actual pirates.
God, you weren't even listening to pirate punk.
Like, if you're not gonna listen to NoFX, I would still, because I know that we haven't really talked about a book, but if you're gonna, if we were gonna add a book,
Let's chuck a book in.
Yeah, I would recommend Hepatitis Bathtub, which is the NoFX biography, right?
Of course.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? But it's like, I listened to it first, actually, like they did it as like an audiobook, and just like incredible insight into like that scene.
See, that does really fascinate me, that kind of
how
it all happened, the story of it, rather than the music of it.
all the early 80s kind of punk rock scene in LA, like it's all kind of, it's their document of it, and it's like some of it is so messed up, man. But like,
yeah, like all the shit you think is worse. It's so much worse.
Really? Go on.
No, they're just crazy stories, like so far removed from like anything that any of us have ever experienced. Like,
I can imagine.
I mean, they would hate us, right? There's no two ways about it. They would probably hate us. But yeah, like if you're not going to listen to them, I would still recommend like reading or listening to that to that book because it's just a really great like document of that period.
I think No Effects have always been a band. It feels like they exist to make people like me feel a bit nervous. Like when you go and see No Effects, like you don't know if they're going to, like, they might do or say something that you don't agree with, and you won't know how to deal with it because we're not, as a generation, like my generation and people younger than me as well. Like when people say things, especially at a gig where you see it as a space where we're all like-minded people, and all of a sudden somebody says something that you don't agree with, you kind of like, it puts you on edge a little bit. But that's what No Effects are there to do. And like I feel like, and like, even like, again, we were talking about it earlier, like even on that record there are moments where looking back there's like, it makes you question your own kind of moral stance on stuff, because they'll push something to a point where you're like, is that, am I okay with that?
Yeah.
But they also, because they clearly just do not give a shit what you think, they kind of almost put themselves out there as like, well, use us as your as your yardstick of where the line is for you. And I think punk rock needs that. I think it's always meant to have been a genre that's meant to push people's buttons, and that even means that a band you like might do something that crosses a line for you, but they're putting themselves on the line to do that. So like, yeah, and I think that's where No Effects are, and again, Valium is a good example of that, because there's some bits on that record now that I'd probably look back on and think, okay, didn't handle that issue particularly sensitively, but it totally helped me shape my position on it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do you think so now the world that we live in, they're still an active band, they'll ever fall victim to cancel culture?
I mean, I said that again before we came on. Like, I can't really believe that hasn't happened already. I mean, that record alone has well, I don't know, man. It depends on. It's smart because it depends on your perspective, really. Like that. So that song, we talked about it before. That song has a song called "My Vagina" on it, which is about someone undergoing a gender transition, and
handled in like the most ham-fisted, fucking offensive way possible.
Yeah.
Like, you know, refers to, like, you know, showing his friends his new designer. Can I say cunt? I said cunt.
You can now.
And the Zoom as I said cunt. So I've said it 4 times now.
You've frozen Zoo.
He's frozen again.
Amazing.
I know. I think my internet is a bit shit. Okay, I think you're back in the room.
Yeah. As that froze, Chris just said cunt 4 times.
Really just going,
Yeah, mate, it's every time we say cunt, it keeps freezing.
Wait, okay. Are you there? Are we live?
am I still frozen for you?
No, you're back.
You're back.
Okay, good. Right, we're all right.
Yeah, and so that, looking back on that now, you think that, I mean, obviously society generally, understanding of gender has moved on a fucking long way since that.
Yeah.
And that's great. And so you would expect to look back on that and go, that is not fucking okay what you did there. But I don't feel like that about it. It feels like somehow sympathetic.
Well, and I don't know whether I listen to it and go, yeah, that's okay, but I definitely listen to it and go, do you know what, that was certainly the first time I'd ever heard a punk band write a song about a sex change or cross-dressing or anything in that it involves gender that wasn't just taking the piss out.
Yeah.
Like it was actually like talking about transitioning in a pro way and not in a piss takey way. It was laughing at people for not getting it rather than laughing at people for doing it.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely not handled the way you would expect a punk band to handle that issue now. But me 20 years ago listening to it knew absolutely nothing about gender.
Yeah.
and nothing about gender diversity, and listened to it, and I was it in some way, shape or form set up a conversation in my head about it. So
but not in a negative way.
no,
So I think that Ricky Gervais has used this line, which is comedy appeals to the intellect, which is quite controversial, but I think it's true.
Yeah, and it's about context as well, isn't it? It's about moment that appeared in, and understanding that it appeared in a moment that's different to now, and it's about hearing it in the context of the record as well, because the other thing that's so often done is if you take certain lyrics off the album and if you just write them in black and white, then it might appear offensive. But you hear it in the context of the record and the soul of the record, like it doesn't feel hateful.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And let's face it, there are plenty of other NoFX songs that are far more controversial, like in lots of different, not more controversial, just as controversial in lots of different ways. But again, I guess that's what they're there for, and that's what don't change NoFX.
Yeah.
If you like a band because generally they say fuck you, then you have to accept that sometimes they're going to say the fuck you, and be okay with
it.
Yeah. They made a joke about after a shooting in America on stage that got them in more trouble than I think they've ever been in. Like fairly recently, probably in the last. Guess that must have happened in the last 5 years. And they're still putting records out and they're still going.
It's weird, isn't it? The kind of zeitgeist. Some bands will fall so victim to that and never be able to put an album out again.
I think it's the expectation of the person or the band, right? So at this point in NoFX's career, there's probably not much they can say that's going to catch people off guard, really.
And I think it's down to authenticity as well. I think everything that Fat Mike and NoFX do and say comes from an authentic place. And I mean, when you've seen Fat Mike do the clown sets that he used to do, where he would Coco the Clown, where he would like do these sets, like acoustic sets, but in between he'd tell like the darkest stories, and it would be like almost like a confessional for him. And it's like that proved that the guy is not he's not like unable to be self-aware. Like he can totally admit when he's done something wrong. But I think he's also aware that doesn't mean that he shouldn't carry on being deliberately offensive, or not deliberately offensive, that's wrong, just like deliberately pushing the boundary with what is socially acceptable to kind of challenge everybody's opinions on things.
Yeah, I kind of wish there was more of it. I guess I think it's important.
Yeah, but it's precisely because of what you call cancel culture that you can't. It's not safe anymore. Like it's not safe to make those kind of statements anymore, because there is no longer any nuance. There is no longer any acceptance of context. There is only this is okay and this is fucking not okay. And this was okay yesterday, but now it's fucking not okay today.
And I think that's the thing. I think viewing something like music through the kind of binary lens of a thing called like a phrase like cancel culture, kind of like, I don't know, it kind of almost takes away the point of music. Like if you're going to view music and art in like a binary right or wrong way, then don't fucking bother with it. Like
for sure.
Like, and I think like the whole idea of cancelling musicians and stuff like that, I don't think that is even a thing. It's just a thing that like right-wing commentators tell us is happening to rile people up, because they'll make a load of money out of it. Like at the end of the day, if you put out an album and you say a load of shitty things on that album, people will call you out on saying shitty things, and then they won't buy your albums and won't come to your shows, and then you won't be successful. That's not cancel culture. That's what's always happened.
Shit record.
And NoFX are fucking living proof that if you can say things with authenticity, it doesn't matter whether they're shitty or not, people will call you out on it. And they might stop coming to your shows, and then you might say something that they do agree with, and they'll start coming to your shows again. And like that's what art is. Like, I think that's what punk rock certainly is. It's like, say what you want and let people judge it how it is. And nobody's canceling anyone. No, and like, unless you fucking assaulted someone, which is a different ballpark. Like, but in terms of the songs you write, nobody's getting like, they're on. I don't think any punk rock fans are snowflakes or any of the buzzwords that have been used for the last 10 years. It's just
I want to be clear, right? When I said it doesn't feel as safe to make those statements anymore, I sound like someone who's saying you can't say anything.
I can't say anything.
It's a minefield. That's a problem.
No, and of course, I don't mean that. What I mean is that the environment's different to how it was. That's all I mean.
Yeah.
You like
it is. Yeah, it really is. And I think, Chris, you're right. It's people. There are right-wing commentators on YouTube that have high subscriber and follower numbers that will tell a story about one person somewhere in Texas that believes one thing and it becomes news.
In that respect, nothing's changed. Like, it's been the same for 20, 30, 40 years. It's just been repackaged over and over again. This kind of fake cultural thing has just kept happening. And like, we were laughing this morning because apparently GB News had they have a segment called Woke Watch. And their segment on Woke Watch was is curry offensive now? Genuine. So, like,
you can't even say curry anymore.
You can't even eat a curry now. And so that's where we're at. It's like, that's what people like Rupert Murdoch have clearly got a lot of money invested in, making people think that things are that ridiculous. But things aren't that ridiculous, and they've never been that ridiculous.
Dog whistle politics, isn't it?
It is, but that's probably got less to do with albums we like.
Yeah. We've gone right off.
We've gone off piece, haven't we?
You can edit that last 10 minutes out.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end by asking you all a very pretentious question, which I've never asked anyone in my life, and I don't know why I'm asking you this, but I feel like the conversation's led us to me asking you this question: what keeps you up at night?
My 2-year-old son.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah. What keeps you up at night? Yeah, I don't know, man. I can be quite an anxious person in general. So I'm pretty good at keeping my mental health in check, but then sometimes that just the daily stuff can just play on your mind,
Yeah.
So yeah, probably no different from anyone else, really.
No, likewise. Like, I made a conscious effort to not engage with anything out there anymore, really, because I know that it knocks me off my trajectory, and so just it's better for me not to think about that. But still, sometimes it seeps in, like through speaking to people. But generally, I will play out things from the day. That's what will make me uncomfortable at the end of the day. Like, why the fuck did I say that to that person at that time? That kind of stuff plays on my mind.
Yeah.
I'm okay though.
You just sound human, mate. It's all good.
Yeah, I was definitely kept awake at night a lot more when I was a more avid social media user. I sleep a lot better now. I don't engage with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, but Chris, when you were using social media, you managed to get like over 1 million hits on some David Cameron song that you made.
That's good. But then I was losing sleep because I was up checking my YouTube.
Awesome. Well, so before I let you go, because it's quite late for us dads and soon to be dad, congratulations again, Chris.
Thank you very much. That's what's keeping me up at night.
Yeah. So you guys, I saw, are now in a covers band called You Okay Hun ? You played your first debut gig, I believe it was, the other night.
Yeah.
What sparked that?
Well, so we're doing this band with two other like really talented musicians that we know, and the singer Steph, I think, wanted to put a set together of kind of pop punk and emo covers to close out this festival. and we actually found that Joe's brother's covers band had a very similar like set list of songs that they pick out. So we kind of got together, and I think it was Chris was like, why don't we change it a little bit and make it into like basically what it's turned into is like Me First and the Gimme Gimmes for like modern pop music for the Hun generation.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. With like we had a few songs that are like we played a Sugar Babes song in the style of like the middle.
Yeah.
We completely mashed up like Dance Dance with Dua Lipa song.
So Taking Back Sunday and
Get Out by
Get
JoJo.
Out by JoJo.
Yeah.
It's
What a song.
well, those two.
Yeah.
Cute Without the E and Get Out by JoJo. Just
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how well they mashed together.
So that's it. But that's really fun, and that's like we're hoping that we're going to get to do some more of that, because the Over Everything's is still very much like turned into a studio project, and until we can put a band together and like figure out how to play it live, I think this is going to be like a fun live thing for us to do in the meantime.
Yeah,
and it's nice to play with those guys as well, Steph and Archie.
Yeah, they're talented. Like, it's nice to play with really talented people.
Yeah. I saw kind of guys filming you from that gig, and is it Steph? You said her name. She's an incredible singer. And the covers you do are so refreshing that there's no kind of Mr. Brightside, all that sort of stuff. It's I think you did Shania Twain. No, but like really eclectic and cool. You know, stuff that people are like, oh, I haven't heard this in ages. I'm going to get up to dance to this, but done in your way.
It was nice. It was really nice to be, but like, it's been such a long time since I played a show. Like, it's just nice to be in a sweaty, packed room again, man. Like, it's been that long.
Yeah.
And the energy was really good. And like, yeah, like seeing how people react when you play a Shania Twain riff as like a halftime beatdown is like, that's just fun. Like, and like we're past, I mean, you can probably tell from the albums that we picked as well, like we're past being really pretentious. Like it's more about having fun and just liking what you like, you know.
Yeah, making money. I'm joking.
How much money are you making now? Come on, tell us.
So far, £0.
£0.
And well, you know,
a week. That's a week though.
A week, that's pretty good. So a couple of weeks, you've still got 0. So 3 weeks.
Actually, our first record's on Spotify, so we may have made 0.001 of a pence.
Yeah,
on stream.
That's true. Cool. Well, guys, I'm going to let you go. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to do a final shout out to the Over Everythings. The Over Everythings are on Instagram. Their album No Solidarity is out there. I strongly recommend it. Just go give it a listen and look forward to the new stuff that's coming. But guys, thanks very much. It's genuinely been really fun chatting to you. We should meet up again for a beer at some point. It'd be good to catch up. Thanks a lot for your time.
Cheers, man.
Cheers,
thanks so much.
buddy.
It's really nice to talk.
No worries. Thanks a lot. See you guys soon.
Right, bro.
Bye. Bye.